how do I file a secondary claim? So real quick, we talk about this a lot. What is a secondary claim? Secondary service connection is one of 5 ways to prove that a particular condition is related to military service. There are 2 types of secondary connection: causation, and I'm using that word very loosely because you that are lawyers out there know that causation means something particular, and it does not mean that in this context. So the first way is causation, second way is aggravation. Basically, if you have one medical condition that's service connected, and that medical condition causes another medical condition, the second one can be service connected as secondary to the first, right? So there's all sorts of them. I mentioned one earlier: sleep apnea to heart disease. Sleep apnea, if you're service connected for sleep apnea, and you go in and you're diagnosed with heart disease that can trace itself to the enlarged right ventricle of your heart, you can prove that it's secondary. And the reason is because it's the right ventricles of the heart that are doing the heavy lifting for the oxygenation of your blood. And so if you have sleep apnea, that muscle, it's a muscle like everything else. And if you go lift weights, you're going to grow your muscle. Your heart pumps harder and harder and harder. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Problem is, the bigger your heart gets unnecessarily, the more damage it's doing to the heart, and you then become high risk for heart disease. Doctors and nurses out there, I'm sorry for that really superficial explanation, but that's what we get on a short time frame here. So to prove that to the VA, though, secondary service connection claims where one condition that's service connected causes one that's not, require 100% of the time require medical proof. You need a doctor to say that, because most of the time, I guess there's a couple scenarios where you could have a medical condition and a layman could diagnose that the causation. I'm not sure what those would be off the top of my head. Most times you're going to need a doctor's proof to prove that one condition caused another one. And it can be, there's stuff on the blog that talks to you about how to get those doctor's letters. We've got some stuff coming up about how to find doctor expert opinions, how to find some of the ones to avoid. There are some hired guns out there that the VA knows about. I'm not going to publish their names. I'm certainly not going to mention their names, but how to find experts that other vets aren't using that can help you figure out the science and the medicine behind your conditions. The other type of secondary claim is called aggravation, and that's largely where there's a couple different types of aggravation, but if you have a medical condition that is aggravating or making a service-connected condition worse, then you can file a claim and service-connect that as well. Or if your service-connected condition is aggravating a non-service connected, then you can look at doing that as well. So different kinds, but I think that this particular question was talking about secondary. One of the most common ones that people are asking me about are PTSD to sleep apnea. It's a harder one. It can be done. It depends on what type of sleep apnea you have. If you have central sleep apnea and PTSD, the proof is a lot more clear and a lot more doctors are aware of it because PTSD alters the brain chemistry. The brain chemistry triggers breathing issues while you're sleeping. I'm oversimplifying a lot here. That's what central sleep apnea is. It's caused by a problem in your central nervous system that causes you to have the sleep apnea. Obstructive is caused by an obstruction or an interference somewhere with your air passage from your nose to your all the way down to the blood barrier or blood oxygen barrier in your lungs, or blood body barrier. I don't know what I'm saying right there. Getting tied up on the B's. In any event, all the way down to the point where oxygen enters your bloodstream in your lungs. If there's an obstruction there, that's usually obstructive sleep apnea. When the two play off each other, one causes the other, or when they're unable to tell which is dominant or what's really going on. There's one called complex sleep apnea, and then there's a fourth kind called idiopathic. Not a lot is known about it. It seems to be kind of a freestanding sleep apnea that just appears out of nowhere. Very little is known. That's very new to me, and I'm still researching that and talking to doctors. But the bottom line is that when you have PTSD, it's a lot easier to prove the connection between that and central apnea because of the connection of the connecting factor of the central nervous system. It's a little harder to show that there is an obstruction resulting from that. Usually if you have a traumatic injury, for example, if you're a victim of military sexual trauma or a rape in service or a sexual assault in service, sleep apnea is a very, very common consequence of the neck and back injuries and the jaw injuries. There are surgeries also that work with fixing, deviated septum sometimes. There's surgeries to the nasal passages. They can cause scarring. They can cause obstructive apnea. There's a whole host of things. Bottom line, if you're trying to show that a service-connected condition caused another one that's not service-connected, you need a doctor. You need a doctor. For the very same reason that you hear me up here really oversimplifying this medicine, lawyers can't get up and do that with judges. We rely on doctors' evidence too. So go out and get a doctor to make the connection for the VA. If you have that connection, 99 times out of 100, you're going to win your claim.